It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen and former Commanders beat reporter Craig Hoffman.
What's up? What's happening? Welcome in. It's the Take Command podcast. I am Craig Hoffman. He is Logan Paulsen. He is, he's where he always is, in Ashburn, where he lives, which is where the Commanders are having training camp. I am in Columbus, Ohio. So I have not been at training camp the last couple of days, meaning like I am most of all of you. I've been following on social media and have a lot of questions about what we've seen on the first 3 days. So very excited to get into it, Logan. How's camp been over the first 3 days?
It's been fun, man. It's cool, like getting guys back on the grass and just watching it, and like, you know, all the conversations we've had about the team this offseason, like, are kind of, you're getting data points. And again, like, I'm a big believer in like training camp's one thing, preseason's another, and then obviously like what you're actually going to be doesn't really happen until season. But again, it kind of informs roles, kind of position battles, philosophy from the coaching staff. And I think it's a lot of fun just to be watching football and learning. Again, like I was thinking about this today, like how blessed I am to be able to go watch practice and just see how the best people in the world structure practice, the things they emphasize at each position group. It's pretty cool for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Training camp, by like week 2, it's like, oh man, we've been out here a lot. It's hot, whatever. Obviously, it's different. It's even more so for the players. You guys, I'm sure I'm sick of running into the same people over and over and over again. But I think that I always really appreciated being out there the first couple of days at training camp. I'm sad to have to miss it this year. Just the energy is amazing, and you get that, and then you'll have the awesome day on Sunday where the fans are out there. Like that's always a really special day. Fans are super hyped up. But like you said, on like the more structural, functional side of like true data points, you also reminded of some of the guys that you may be not giving enough credence to. A guy like Chris Paul will talk about getting some reps with the ones at right guard. So like there's some fun stuff to get into, offensive, defensive, and we'll get into as much as we possibly can. I will say the one big difference between me not being there and most of the fans listening not being there, Logan, is you're not texting, as far as I know, you're not texting all of our listeners your notes. So I just have, I was actually at the gym this morning when you were texting me, and I'm just getting like a stream of consciousness of little notes from Logan, which was fun. So we'll get in. I have a sense of what's going on from that. I'm excited to dive in. But I feel like we did this last year as DQ was taken over, but I think it's really important, one, for new listeners, and one, for old listeners, to reemphasize the structure of how Quinn builds during training camp. Starts off relatively easy. They're not even in shells. They're just in helmets. The practice was like 60 minutes on day one. What was it, 75 yesterday? And I guess, was it 90? Was it a full 90 today?
About 90 today, yeah. They started at 8, so they finished around 9:30.
Yeah, so they're ramping up into it, and it's just smart to make sure that you minimize injuries. You get guys readjusted to being in cleats for those that haven't been doing as much work in cleats the off season. Like there's a million things that go into why this is smart. But as a guy who went through this and probably also didn't go through this, I'm sure there were some years you just dove right in. Coaches are excited to get going. Why is it so important for you to see this structure and how DQ's running things?
Yeah, and I think back to like even his press conference on Monday and how important he said the ramp up was, and that's the ramp up you're describing. Like every day there's a little bit more field volume, every day there's a little bit more the length of practice, more reps, all those types of things. But I think the thing that stuck out to me most is like, that's smart, like from a strength and conditioning standpoint, right? But like one of the things that I always find is difficult for coaches to manage is like actually how you structure practice to accommodate that. So, I think it was Monday was the first. What was the first day of practice? Wednesday? Was that the first day of practice?
Wednesday, yeah, I think.
Yeah. So it feels like a million years ago now. But like one of the things that I really appreciated, and I've talked to other strength coaches who've done similar things and try to get this information to the head coach, but they haven't been able to like learn from it. It's basically like you can still get a high intensity, high focus, high speed, quote unquote practice, by shifting into certain situations. And so I think that was the thing that was most interesting about Wednesday was like they did red zone, and red zone is very challenging, right? It's high, it's deceleration, acceleration. The players are super focused. It's very competitive. Like there's no, like if you were to watch it as a fan, you wouldn't think, oh, this is a light day, quote unquote, right? Like it feels very intense. But the thing that they're doing a good job of is mitigating total high speed yards, right? So like when you get your GPS data, they have a category of high speed yards, and that number, if the volume there gets really high, you have a really high likelihood of kind of a soft tissue injury. So like what I like about it is like first day, we shorten the practice, but it feels fast. It feels quick. It feels really focused because we're doing real football stuff. We're doing like real situational football. And so again, it's just limiting kind of like that intelligence when it comes to structuring practice is extremely smart. And so I think that's something that I really appreciate. So not only is there a really smart kind of physical element to it, I think there's also, like, and we'll talk about this more in a second, like he makes it fun. Like the types of drills they're doing in team are also a little bit different, especially as the week goes on.
Yeah, it's part physiological, it's part psychological, right? Yeah. If you're a team that really wants to emphasize situational football, it's like, okay, day one, situational football, what's up? Let's go. Like we're working in condensed fields, we're working in red zone. And also, you're not going to pull your hamstring because you're never fully opening up. Mm-hmm. And like that is really, really smart on both of those fronts. And I don't know which one he would say is driving it more. Like, yeah, we want to do red zone. You're going to see a huge, he said, like, you're going to see a big red zone emphasis. I always love when he comes out with his opening statement and the press conference, and he kind of preps us in the press for what he's going to, or what we're going to see out there on the field on any given day. But like you said, the strength and conditioning side of it, where like Chad Engelhardt is like, thank God. And obviously the players are probably appreciative too, but there's also just that like, hey, this is really, really important to us, and that's why we're going to work on it first. And I feel like that's very different than a lot of other things that I've seen where it's like, no, we do first and second down first because that's the base. And that's, Dan's willingness to do things a little bit different has huge, huge benefits.
Yeah, and I think it's so interesting, because I coach high school football, and so you're always talking about practice structure and what you want to emphasize, and like you only have a certain number of reps, right? Like as much as people want to say, oh, they practice a lot, they have all these walkthroughs, they have all this film study, that's all true, but you only have a certain number of reps on the field, and so how do you maximize that? And I think just giving those guys plenty of opportunities to feel confident, feel comfortable in these situations. Yeah, like I like how you pointed that out. There, it's two-pronged in terms of benefit, right? Like one is that you're physiologically going to feel good, right? But also I think just the mental emphasis on this being important, on the tight throwing windows. In some ways, I think it's really good for the quarterback, because you start off with a really high level of difficulty in terms of tight window throws. You have to anticipate at a high level. Like the intensity for the quarterback from a mental standpoint is turned up to 11 from day one. And I think there's a lot of benefit to that because then as you transition to the field stuff, the windows get a little bit bigger. And so all that anticipatory background that you've built up is now laid to bear in a really nice way. So I really like the structure. And then I think the other thing, just to piggyback on, is like today they did a drill that I thought was really cool. It was like offense, you get one play to get a first down. Defense, you get one play, stop it. And then you go first, second, third. And that was like the first team thing that they did today. Oh, that's great, man. Just talk about getting
you texted me about this. So it's like a third down and whatever the yardage is, and the first team offense goes against the first team defense, and they get one chance to get a first down, then it's 2s on 2s, 3s on 3s.
It's really just one play, right? And it's just like, did you get it? No. Okay, next one. Did you get it? No, next one. And it was really, I think that's really cool to kind of start the practice off because it's like one of the things that, like, as a player, just thinking back to my time, is like you get in this thing where it's like, okay, we got team run, we got 9-on-7, we go 7-on-7, and then we go to team, right? And so you kind of, I don't want to say you slog through the beginning because I really enjoyed those elements of practice.
Those are your jam.
But it's not competitive. It is competitive in that I'm going against somebody on the other team and I want to do a good job at my job. But all of a sudden you bring the whole offense together and you say, hey man, like it's a game. We're keeping track of the score. Like who's going like can the first, second, and third team offenses get a first down versus the first, second, and third team defenses. And I think that's a great way to kind of say like, oh, shoot, like we got to be up and ready for the next elements of practice. Because what they do right now is go to team run like everybody else in the NFL does. But to kind of prime the pump with that, I thought was great. And then they finished practice today with another drill that I thought was great. It was like a move the ball drill. But you kind of start in 2nd and 10. So then you get a first down, then you get a new set of downs, and you go basically from the 25 into goal. And so I really like that also because it creates this environment. You can kind of feel the energy in those periods kind of wake up. We're moving the ball. Like the defense is talking a little bit of mess. Like the offense is getting a little bit stressed. Like I think that's great. And when you're in a culture talking about competition and breeding that environment, you got to like live in the fire a little bit. And I love that they emphasize that at the beginning of practice. They emphasize it in the middle just to kind of keep guys locked in. And then they have a competitive 2-minute situation at the end too. So I love that structure of practice. I think it's really great. And again, it kind of like, Dan talks about being good at situational football, being hyper competitive. You see the emphasis in terms of how they structure practice. And I think that's that's pretty neat.
Yeah, it's definitely different. I mean, I spent most of my training camp days were Jay Gruden training camp days because that's when I was on the beat. I obviously saw some of Ron's camps over the years. But with Jay, like, it was kind of nice as a reporter in that, like, it was very predictable and I knew what was going to happen every day. It's like, okay, we have the individual periods. Then eventually the Indy's going to turn into one-on-ones. Like, I still remember it, all those hot days in Richmond. So it's like one-on-ones, and then you go to team run, and then you do this, then you do that. And then eventually, like, there'd be a move the ball 11 on 11 at the end. And you kind of knew where you were in practice based off of what was happening. And there was a flow to it that was nice in its predictability, but like is limiting because you're always working on the same stuff. And there's only so much you're working on certain situations. And like, sure, the move the ball drill might change a little bit on a given day, but often it was like all right, now it's almost like your kid's basketball practice where it's like, all right, guys, let's scrimmage at the end. And it's like, there's 5 minutes left or whatever. And so to have that situational work earlier on and to keep it fresh, keep it fun, keep it mentally engaging, like it's just going to make for better practice because guys are going to be locked in at a different level versus that feeling of going through the motions. It's fine for me to go through the motions as a reporter on the sideline. Okay, this is the period where I'm allowed to take video and, send it out onto social media. Great. Like, I don't have to be super locked in for that. For the guys, like, you got to be super locked in on all the details so you're learning it at a high level, and ultimately when we get to the fall, we'll be performing it at a high level on Sundays. Anything else from the structure that you wanted to point out before we dive into some of the details of the offense and the defense?
Yeah, I think just one thing that sticks out to me, and again, like, you don't really feel this until you watch a lot of football practices, is just the tempo feels really good. Like the energy of practice, there's little music playing, guys are kind of talking around, but there's good energy in between drills. Like, that's something that is really hard, I think, to build and to grow, right? Like, it's really hard to cultivate, and there's like a sweet science to it, and Dan does a good job of it. So like, I'd be like, just as an example, I'd be willing to go to a seminar to hear about how Dan structures that. Like, how do you make it so guys are like moving quickly? Because I've been part of staffs where people yell at you to do it, and it's a little bit like, oh, these guys suck, I don't want to do that. But there's also places I've been, like, I think back to San Francisco in 2017, where it was like, oh, there's like this is fun to be out here. And so that's something else that he does a great job of. And I think the whole staff does, quite frankly, of just kind of like, because there is some monotony to camp and it's still relatively fresh. But today was the third day and I was like, man, there's a little pep in the step still. The legs aren't heavy and maybe that's part of it. Structuring practice so the guys are fresher throughout, so the energy is good. But I think that's another thing that I just want to call attention to. It's like this urgency, this energy. It's pretty cool.
Dear fellow reporters on the beat, who I know listen to this podcast, that'd be a fun question for Dan Quinn. That'd be a fun one for the press conference. You could ask him. My guess is it probably starts in the meeting room and like starts with the position coaches being like, hey guys, just remember we're out there. Like this is who we want to be. Like, we want to play fast. We want to get out there. So that means we're on the hop in between drills. Like, we're getting to where we need to be. When the play calls are coming in, like, we're lining up with purpose. And then as long as your leaders do it, then you're good. I mean, I think back to last year when, Bryson Tremaine like wasn't holding that up and DQ like really got on him. But, like, he's never having to get on, and I'm not saying this to be provocative at all, but like he never had to get on Terry, right? So this year with Terry not there, like guys like Deebo, whoever, like I'm sure they're getting on the line quick and they're doing what they need to do. And obviously, something we'll talk about in a second is the command that Jaden has of the offense. And so like the fact that Jaden is like, let's go, he's on top of it. There's no time to waste. And he also can tell someone like, get up there, get online, or hey, you're in the wrong spot. Like that ownership that he has on the offensive side has to help. And we can get into that more in a second.
Yeah, for sure. And I also think I was thinking back to yesterday and today and even Wednesday too, is like Cleveland Farrell is like a sneaky, really good leader on this team. Like talking about a guy that's like, hey, we're going to pass rush. And he is sprinting. And so it's the first day it was like him by himself. And then the next day it's Frankie Louvu and Dietrich Wise, and they're kind of like racing over there. And then today it was 5 guys doing it, right? So like I think, when you build a culture, you talk about bringing in the right people. You mentioned Jaden Daniels, but there's also like these sneaky like leaders that kind of carry that mantle for you and that are really going to buy in. So I think that I literally had like a smile on my face because I was like, man, that's just fun. You know what I mean? You just kind of like mess around with the boys, and it leads to this thing that you're talking about, this kind of energetic, emotionally positive practice.
Yeah. It could have just been also Cleveland being like, I'll race you.
Yeah,
and all of a sudden you're 5 years old again, and that's a whole lot of fun. All right, let's get into some of the details, some of the early position battles developing, all that kind of stuff next here on Take Command. Take Command Podcast. I am Craig Hoffman. He is Logan Paulsen. Let's dive into the side of the ball, Logan, that everyone came into camp having way more concerns about, but through 3 days has been the better side of the ball in burgundy and gold. Although, are they wearing burgundy or are they wearing white in the practice?
I'm trying to remember. So white was offense and burgundy was defense. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they're wearing the burgundy. The defense has looked fantastic from everything you've been telling me, from what I've seen on social media. They've done a good job trying to confuse Jaden, Marcus, and the quarterbacks. They've done a good job in coverage. The pass rushes, there's been some real highlights as Von Miller gets out there and gets accustomed. Guys like Javon Kinlaw lining up in interesting places. What do you biggest thing taking away from the first 3 days of practice when you think about the defense? If I just ask you, not hypothetically because it's a podcast, I'm just going to ask you, what's the thing that from the defensive side of the ball you walk away thinking after 3 days of practice?
So I always have to caveat this anytime we're talking about defense is everything you said is 100% true. But just remember that because of how defenses install and because of how offenses install, sometimes the defense gets way ahead really quickly. So for example, they had some zero pressures in today, the defense, right? So that's straight man, there's no safety, we're just bringing pressure, right? And I'm not sure if Cliff and the offense has installed zero responses yet. You know what I mean? Usually they've got some type of screen, some type of quick outlet, some type of, hey, we're going to go full slide and pick it all up. There's different solutions, but usually those things don't happen until you get a little bit more deeper into the playbook, right? Because you don't expect to see that so early. So I just want to put that caveat out there. They seem to be at different spots in the install, and sometimes that leads to a big discrepancy. However, the thing that I've really been impressed with the defense is really, quite honestly, is the secondary. The secondary and the linebackers have looked outstanding. And that's the first and second group. So obviously, Marshawn Lattimore, Trey Amos, but also Noah Igbenogany's done a great job kind of playing outside, inside. He's had a lot of contested catch opportunities where he's played through the hands and been in tight, sticky coverage. Tyler Owens in that second group kind of playing nickel, which is something that I wasn't really expecting.
We're going to have to come back to that. That's been a huge story through 3 days.
Yeah, so him playing true nickel. So he's matching up with receivers, and he's also playing in the box. And just that role, we were talking about who the big nickel was going to be. That was a big kind of in our preview show. And, we mentioned him briefly, but to see him kind of really embrace that role, I thought was kind of interesting. So that was cool. Will Harris, I think, has looked great. Quan Martin, I'm not kidding. They've done a great job in the secondary of being hyper aggressive in man-to-man situations, really aggressive in man-to-man situations, playing good techniques, disguising coverages really well. Today there was an interception where, it looked like it was two-man. They both dropped out, but it was really one robber, one rat, where one of the safeties rotates to the middle of the field and the other safety kind of becomes a hook player. And Tyler Owens made a great play on the football. I think Will Harris had a similar play where he tipped it up and Mike Sanders still gets an interception. They just look really sharp, and that's the linebackers too in coverage, right? And that's Dominique Hampton with the second group. Bobby Wagner has an interception today. There's a lot of really good stuff that they're doing, and how tight everything is. There's not a lot of air in the coverage, right? So usually man-to-man coverage, you see a guy kind of get routed up on the release and oh gosh, there's a little bit of space, but here it's almost like they're Velcroed together. Now there's been a couple DPI calls, a couple holding calls, but I would prefer that at this point of the offseason, and this defense being hyper aggressive and hyper emotional, kind of in terms of the energy that they're playing with, which is fantastic. And then you couple that kind of with, I think, a defensive line that's rushing the passer pretty well at the moment. You know what I mean? And again, there's some issues in terms of on Thursday, is this run going to be a touchdown? Are they fitting it exactly right? But the coverage in the back end has been tremendous.
That's really encouraging, because that was definitely my biggest question coming into the year is how does Lattimore look? How does Amos look? The two outside guys, Lattimore injury and age adjacent. But again, I thought it was an interesting point that like really, I feel like I need to go back and watch the beginning of last year for Lattimore when Pizzuto was on with us and was like, he was the highest ranked guy through the first 6 games or whatever it was before he hurt his hamstring. I was like, oh, I thought that was like a 2018 thing. But to see just how good he still is, but obviously being comfortable with his hamstring and being able to fully trust his ability to cut and run is going to completely change the confidence that he plays with. But then Amos is a rookie. Like, he's going to have moments this year because that's being a rookie in the league. But if he can, in between the moments be really good, like that totally changes things. And, to hear you talk about the lack of air, that's like the terminology we used last year talking about the Eagles, and not that this Commanders defense is going to become the Eagles defense of last year by any stretch. But like the being on a string, like that's what makes a really good pass coverage unit, the ability to disguise, the ability to be on the same page. And then I think that like the upside potential that we've talked about with this team is like, they do have a pretty, on the back end, high level of athleticism. Like, Quan Martin's a sick athlete. Amos, Sainristil. Like, Sainristil is small, but he's a freakish athlete. Like, his RAS was like 9.9 something. Like, it is. And the only reason that it wasn't closer to a 10, like it was a 991 and it was a 998, is because they take size into the equation.
Sure.
And so to
Tyler Owens was a 10, you know what I mean? Like, that shows
to
up.
have that level of speed and athleticism, plus the brains of a Bobby Wagner in the middle, like that's really exciting. The one thing that I would say though, like how much of the stuff was man versus zone, where a lot of these plays are being made and a lot of issues were happening.
So I think a lot of it, at least today and yesterday too, like a lot of man coverage, like just straight, like one plug, like one lurk, one rat, zero, like it was like. They have a good feel for what's going on right now offensively. And, like Noah Brown's not practicing. Obviously, Terry wasn't here. So, like, there is an
element, what I was
going
to say.
Of that going on. But it's just, like, you need somebody who can consistently win versus man-to-man coverage. And, like it was interesting, like watching Marshawn Lattimore yesterday, like how he like kind of it was number 19. I forget his name at the moment.
Is that Chris Moore? Or
Chris Moore. Yeah, Chris Moore kind of was running in like the strength of the jam, the anticipating the in cut. Like it would have been an interception. It was 7-on-7. Like Jane Daniels kind of pulled it down and booted out and then threw it over his head. It was kind of a broken play. I think it's unrealistic. I think if you look at the beginning of the play, you're like, oh man, great play by Lattimore. And to see that kind of confidence from him, I was just really impressed with, because you talked about the movement skills. So a lot of really positive things coming out of the defense, I think, at the moment. And we'll see, like I said, it feels like they're a little bit ahead in terms of install. And I think the offense, like inevitably, like day 6 or 7 will catch up and it'll look great and all that kind of stuff. But man, like I've just been, again, like Quan matching up in the slot. Will Harris, man, he's looked great, like in run fits and stuff. Like he's just looked really locked in. So we'll see how that looks when the pads come on. But from a coverage secondary standpoint, that's been my biggest takeaway, just how good that group has looked. Yeah,
that would be my 2 things. Is like minor point. The pads on the outside matter less than they do on the inside, but they don't not matter at all. Like the physicality level can go to a different level once the pads are on. Sometimes that favors the defense, to be fair.
Well, so for me, like what I mean by that is like when you're a safety, like you have to be of 2 minds a little bit more, right? I have to fit this run, or if I'm the nickel, I have to fit this run and cover this guy, right? Like that's where to me it gets a little bit like maybe when the pads are on, we can run the ball more consistently.
Yeah. Or if it's a lot of 7-on-7, there's no running the football.
Yeah, correct. Mm-hmm.
So you have that. And then like if it is a lot of man coverage, the reason I initially asked is because it's like, well, there is one large story that we haven't touched on 25 minutes in, and it's that 17's not there. And that's the biggest leverage point that his side of the argument has, is the ability to walk into Adam Peters' office and be like, so if teams are playing man against you, who's winning if my guy's not there? And what's that worth to you? And I think we're going to see it until he's there, because like that was the reality of last year. Like that is true. Hopefully Deebo can do some of that, but like Deebo has never been a super man-to-man separator type of receiver. That's not who he is. He's a guy that's going to exploit space, get him in space, and then he's impossible to tackle, and that's what makes him really special. Especially if Noah Brown's not practicing, like the big physical ability to like just trust, hey, it's one-on-one, the coverage is good, but we're going to throw it up and Noah's going to make something not bad happen. It might be like the worst case scenario is probably an incompletion, but he might make a catch. He might draw a PI, which he was unbelievable at last year. And then the obvious Terry being the best guy one-on-one. So I would hope that Marshawn Lattimore, especially at his best, if he's healthy, is able to lock down the caliber of receiver, respectfully, that's out there right now. And I think it's encouraging that like everyone else is too. The fact that Trey Amos has looked good, and it's not like there's scrubs out there, and there's good athletes out there. A guy like Luke McCaffrey is a great athlete, so that Marshawn can like run with him is a good sign. But he's not Terry, and like nobody else out there is Terry, one of the 10 best receivers in the league, and so that should, especially in situations where there's a lot of man-to-man happening, favor the offense, or favor the defense in a pretty major way.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And it'll be interesting to see, like kind of if anybody of this like second group, quote unquote, can emerge as like a playmaker versus man situations. Because I thought, like there was a couple opportunities where I'm like, oh, this is like a good ball. Like there was one today where like Chris Moore ran like a high cross, if I remember correctly. And it was a good route. Coverage was tight, but like Jaden like laid the ball in like perfectly. And he had a shot at it. And it would have been a really tough catch. So don't get me, I'm not like criticizing him here. But like, if you get someone in the offense who can start making those plays like a little bit more consistently, like Zach Ertz, like was the guy on Thursday, right? He was making all these plays versus man-to-man coverage, and that's what we come to expect from him, right? He's really good in those situations, but when there's not a lot of other people, like for example, Strachan, number 84, like goes up, I think it was over Noah, like really like big jump, like navel to helmet kind of jumps up, two hands on the ball, and you're like, oh, this is like, because a lot of the opportunities that this offense cultivates are 50-50 shots down the field on go balls, right? Like that's what they like to do. You see that with Diami's production, Terry's production last year, these shot plays down the sideline, Zacchaeus last year. And he goes up and really, I'm like, oh, that was fantastic. That's exactly what you want to do here. Kind of bobbles it, he loses his balance, ball comes out. And like, that's kind of been the tenor of those opportunities, like really tight coverage, really either super accurate ball, great play by with the receiver. We just haven't finished it, and I think like to your point, like I like what 84 is bringing to the table, right? I like what Moore brings to the table, but like if you want to play varsity football, like you got to show you can make some of those opportunities. And again, it's a third day camp, guys are still getting their legs back under them, but those are the things that I would point to is like saying, maybe the defensive production slightly inflated, but what I would say in counter to myself is like the techniques are really tight.
Yeah.
The hand usage is really good. The physicality is really good. And the communication in the back end is very sharp, right? There's a lot of motions, a lot of things to kind of get guys' eyes in the wrong places. They're communicating very, very well. And I think like that they feel like a different group a little bit. You know what I mean? It's year two of the defense. And so like that's where I'd say like, yes, some of these guys like coming back and doing things like Noah, for example, he's out there. What does that look like? But it does feel different than it did at any point last year.
Yeah, that's great. And you sometimes have to just live with making it really hard on the offense and being like, okay, if you're going to make plays, there's only so much we can do. And the problem is like when you're facing the Eagles, like that, it's probably going to happen. Right. But so maybe you have to make a play yourself. But I will say, and I want to get back to the offensive stuff, obviously, and some other things that I've heard and seen that I wanted to follow up with you on in a second. But on the defensive side of it, it does feel like they've actually made those plays. Like there has been a ton of turnovers from what I understand. And I'm just curious what you like, is that again, the confusion, the lack of like great opportunities because there's not a great man-to-man separator? Are they confusing Jaden? If so, is it like probably playbook oriented, or are they just taking like the disguises and some of these man zone shells and all this stuff to a different level this year?
Well, we talked about how Joe Wood Jr., I think at his core, wants to be an aggressive pressure and man-to-man coverage team. And I think the guys have done a good job. Like, I try to, like when I'm watching practice, I think of it as a player, right? I'm like, what coverage still are they in? What coverage do I think it is? What coverage is it actually? And I think they do it. So quite frankly, they did a good job of kind of disguising their variations of man. Like it looks like 2-man, it's actually one plug, or it's like 2-man, it's one lurk. And the way guys played leverages, the way they're able to pass stuff off and shift. That was something we talked about, and seeing it kind of actualize, like instead of having to like shift the nickel when there's a motion, it's like, no, we're just going to rotate the safety down and the nickel's going to kind of become the whole player and the other safety is going to say hi. Like having coverage guys like that is really fantastic. So that kind of stuff has been cool to see. So I think there is a schematic element to it. I think the personnel at least seems to be playing better. And I also, again, I feel like there is a little bit of, there's a little bit of a defensive edge in terms of what's in, but I think they're executing it really well. And so, like, kudos to Joe Wood Jr. and that defensive staff for getting people where they need to be and playing at a high level. So, like, and again, it's the third day of training camp. And I already talked about this. Like, training camp is one thing. We haven't even put pads on yet. Training camp is one thing. Preseason's another. First week of season's the other thing, right? So this is still really early, but in terms of positive signs, like, I feel like there are some positive signs for the defensive secondary, linebackers, in terms of how they're playing their coverages at the moment.
For sure. A couple guys I wanted to follow up on real quick, and then we'll hit the offense a little bit more, or in a little bit more detail. Let's circle back to Owens, because his name, or in the way you take notes, I'm getting a lot of texts about 40. He seems to be everywhere. And we've talked about him quite a bit, is like, let's not get out over our skis on Tyler Owens in the offseason. He was an undrafted free agent. He was unbelievable on teams. Playing teams is very different than playing defense. But if he can take, because of his athleticism, like, he's got a chance to be a good NFL player on the defensive side. That was never off the table. And it seems like mentally he has really picked things up and could be some kind of steal for them, and might have a real role defensively, as opposed to just waiting for fourth down to go run out there on punt coverage and try to take someone's head off.
Yeah, because I think you're looking at, like, what's his best situation, given that Will Harris is here and Quan's here. And, like, for him playing nickel, like, I was like, man, you're always going to be a little bit lacking in terms of coverage in man-to-man situations. And I think, he's done a good job answering that call. Like, they don't have a ton in. So that's another thing. I just want to, like, we'll see how the mental side of it progresses as we go. But his ability to move and run and, like, utilize his length in terms of staying attached to receivers. And again, there's been a couple holdings, a couple PIs, like, but I'd say on the whole, like, the movement skills and understanding route concepts has been much, much better than I thought, right? It's obviously not like Mike Sanders still good, but it's pretty darn good. And so for a guy of that size, you're like, he's kind of, to me, like, carving a role, saying, like, maybe we don't want Mike Sanders still in the box all the time. Like, I can do that, and I can match up with the tight end, or I can match up with a certain type of slot receiver. Like, he had some really good, like, very competitive reps with Luke McCaffrey, like 50-50 balls, back shoulder balls, and they were really kind of physical, and thought, man, like, that's good work right there. You know what I mean? So, again, like, that type of stuff for him is really interesting, because, like, the flexibility it gives the defense, and then the idea of that athlete, like you alluded to, taking a larger role, I think, is also really cool. So definitely going to keep an eye on him, especially when the pads come on, because, like, coverage, man-to-man coverage is one thing, like, coverage and run fits is a different thing. And so, like, how that progresses for him over the next couple of weeks will be interesting.
I'm curious too, like, you talk about what happens when more gets in. Like, for him in the regular season, they don't have to put a ton more in. Like, he could have a very small package, and that could be a way to get his athleticism on the field in certain situations that are advantageous without having to have him own the entire playbook. Obviously he needs to know it because he's a depth piece. You always need to know it if you're on the roster to be ready just in case. But in terms of, like, ideal situation, featured role, they could carve something small out and let him really own that section of the playbook. Javon Kinlaw. I wanted to follow up on him. Obviously, it's early. We'll have a lot more on the lines once the pads come on. But, like, is he going to play inside? Is he going to play outside? Like, the elephant end. Is he a 3-tech? Well, they've got Payne and Newton, and those guys are probably a little bit better at the 3 with John Allen gone. So what are they doing with Javon Kinlaw so far, and what kind of stands out from him in these first 3 days?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the size is the first thing that jumps out to you at any moment.
Still big, shocking.
Yeah, still huge. The snap that he plays with, like, when he's like when his hands are good and his get off's good, like, it's good, man. Like, I think there's times also where you see him get a little high, get a little, like, kind of looking over the block, and you're like, that's the stuff that's going to be hard for you to, like, overcome, because, like, NFL offensive linemen love when you do that. Like, so how does that progress over the next couple of weeks? And then he's been a little nose with the first group, is what I would say. Again, it's hard to see the exact spacing of the group.
Is he like nose? Is he shade? Is he one?
Yeah, right. But he's like, Duran's definitely the 3, and then he's either like a 2-eye or a true shade. So that's what I've seen from him. And, in the second group, he does play 3 technique a little bit. Like, him and Johnny kind of rotate through there a little. So, and then on third down pass rush situations, like, he had a rep today with Von Miller where, like, he's running like an old school what is that, TE, where he goes first, like does the atomic rip under the guard's arm, and then pulls that guy into the tackle. Like think about like Justin Smith and Aldon Smith back with the 49ers and like the early 2010s kind of era.
Yep.
Like that strength to pull that guy with you, that physicality to kind of bump off the tackle, and that Vaughn get in there for what I think may have been a sack. Obviously Jaden Daniels is a magician, so we don't know for sure, but like pretty clean rush. So like the size, the physicality, and then I think the fact that he is kind of playing more of a nose is interesting to me. And it'll be interesting to see how that, because again, this staff does such a good job. I hate to say like, oh, he's doing this today, because every day they kind of are like,
right.
Oh, you do this and you do this, and I want to see you this, and this is your rep. And so they do a good job of making sure that they get a look at everybody before they kind of make their decisions. But as of right now, that's shown up. And again, like he had a bull rush, I want to say on Wednesday, where it was like he like forklifted the like old school forklift, 2 hands on the chest, the guard's on skates. He had to like stop because the guard was so on their heels, going to fall into the quarterback. Like that kind of stuff, when that flashes, that
and it was
pops.
Coleman, right? Who's like just a house of a human being. I know he had one on Coleman that caught a lot of people's eyes. So maybe maybe it was a different guy.
I don't remember, but again, like those types of splash plays.
Yeah.
Again, we talked about how important those are. Can you make them more consistent, pad level, consistent hand placement? I think you can. It's just about like the reps in practice.
Yeah, I think, just last thing to wrap here, when we talk about some of these structures and the different ways they can use players, and it's kind of like, in some ways, it's the most fun thing we can do in the offseason and this time of year, because it's like, oh, the possibilities. Ultimately, you have to start narrowing down the possibilities and see which ones are going to work, but we're not at that point in camp, so it's fun to see them experimenting with so many of the things that we all were thinking about all off season long. All right, let's wrap the defense there for today. We'll obviously do a lot more early next week, and we'll be able to talk a lot about more about the line of scrimmage when the pads come on. But let's hit the offense real quick before we get out of here today on Take Command. Wrapping up here on Take Command, that's Logan Paulsen. I am Craig Hoffman, and we're talking about the Commanders' offense, which, as we've been talking about through the defensive lens, has had some bumps in the road on the first couple of days of camp. This is what happens in training camp pretty much every year. Defense gets a little bit ahead, offense finding its footing. Obviously, this is an offense currently trying to operate without its top 2 receivers in terms of the top 2 outside guys. Noah Brown taking a vet day as he's coming back from injury, or 2 vet days. Terry obviously holding out. But one of the first throws of camp was a touchdown to Deebo Samuel. They're finding ways to get it done. Obviously, I think the biggest piece of encouraging news that I've seen is Jaden still seems to be very good at football. Logan, what stands out from the offense over these first couple of days?
Yeah, I think Jaden does look pretty good at football. Today, obviously, which is a Friday, was probably the day that he struggled the most. You know what I mean? Like in terms of, again, like zero pressure, getting protections call. Like, and it's hard for me to say he even struggled because I don't even know what's in. I think that's the problem.
Right.
Is like, where are they in their install cycle versus the defense? And maybe the defense is a little ahead now. So I thought on Monday or on Wednesday.
Can we pause on that for a second? If you're a head coach, you know what's going on both sides of the ball. It's like something like, why would you let that? I'm asking this like non-judgmentally. Why would you let that happen?
So I think you would do it because, like, I, as an offensive coordinator, I have things that build off each other, right? So, like, for example, like I want to make sure that because we're talking protections, I want to make sure our 6-man protection's in and it's ruled out first, because if I don't put the 6-man protection in, then the 7-man protection doesn't make any sense, right? And I've like, so, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's levels to it. And so I've never worked with Cliff. I've never been in his offense before, but I remember with Kyle, like, he was every year on year was pretty dogmatic about, like, this is day 1, this is day 2, and because it follows a teaching progression. And so, like, inevitably, like, this same exact thing happened in 2012. Like, Jim Haslett put in rain, which is their all-out pressure, and we didn't have an answer for it. And I remember Kyle
his
was just
teaching
like,
progression, that could happen on like day 1 or day 2.
It happened on like the 5th day, right?
Yeah,
and so
you
like,
guys didn't have the answer for it.
We were like boned, and I remember coming to the meeting, and like Kyle was like, "Yeah, don't worry about it. Like, we'll have an answer for that in the season." Like that, and that was his like demeanor. It was like, "Yeah, don't worry about it. We're okay. Like, we'll figure it out. We'll have an answer. We can run this play. We can do this." And in the meeting he talked about it, right? He's like, "Oh yeah, we can do these 6 things,
right?
And we're not going to put that in now because we haven't gotten there yet." Like, one of them was a screen that was a day 7 install for him. You know what I'm saying? Like, so to me, it's just like, think about it like you're teaching everyone talks about the volume that's in NFL offenses now. You're teaching a lot. And so like most times there's foundational blocks that kind of build to this bigger thing. And the stuff down the road is the stuff that gives you nuanced answers versus some of these more technical pressures. And that's the other thing about pressures too, specifically in training camp, is oftentimes you don't we don't get, like, for example, when I was with Kyle both times in San Francisco, and you don't game plan your defense. So like if they're putting in cross dog, you might reference that they're putting in cross dog in the install versus certain protections, but it's not like you go to individual and you just rep cross dog 1,000 times. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah. So like in the season, if you're facing a Mike Zimmer defense and you know those double A gaps, blitzes are coming, and cross dog is one of them, where the two linebackers are going to cross each other and then try to come straight up the gut. Like you're probably going to do that in individual drills. Like that's what it means when we talk about game planning something. But you're just working on basic, like, hey, a rush is coming at us. How do we pass this off? That kind of stuff in your individuals. And then same thing once you get into the teamwork is like you haven't repped that. So because the teaching progressions they're not based off of each other, you wind up with inherent mismatches at times, and often the offense winds up on the short end of the stick.
Yeah, correct. So like on Wednesday, the offense put in a bunch of they put in like 2 man beaters, right? And so they look pretty good on that day, right? But then they don't put another one in till Sunday, let's say, hypothetically. I don't know the install schedule. Yeah. But the defense knows those man beaters now on Friday. You know what I'm saying? Like there's just, and again, you don't want to rush the progression. You don't want to get ahead of yourself. So I think that's part of the reason this happens every year. It's happened every training camp I've been a part of, every training camp I've watched. At some point, the defense is going to be way ahead because it's easier to install. Like I was talking to Fred Smoot about this. He's like, we're going to run cover 2. Like, we might tweak a little bit from last year, but it's like it's the same install. Like for the offense, it's like you got to go over every position, talk through the rules, talk through the fronts. It's a little bit more nuanced, a little bit more complicated. And so I think that's where you see maybe a discrepancy in where the defense is at and where the offense is at.
So with all that said, picking back up where we left off, Jaden might not have all of the answers, but seems to be operating well in the places that he can.
Yeah, and I think you see, to me, it's good stuff. So, like, we talked about how tight the coverage windows were. Like, there's times where he's, like, trying to squeeze a ball in, and it's like, oh, no, I can't get this ball over the top. And, Bobby Wagner gets a hand on it, and it gets intercepted. Or, like, hey, like, there was one with Marcus today where I was like, this is, like, a straight-up good disguise by Tyler Owens. Like, it was, like, it looked like 2-man. They played it like 2-man outside. Or So they played it, like, man coverage underneath. And then he tried to throw a strike on a high cross coming across the field. And Tyler Owens, who was kept high, just triggered like an absolute lunatic and intercepted the football. So, like, that disguise is good. That coverage is good. Like, good job defense. Like, that's something that Marcus is going to file away and be like, okay, I just got to make sure I check the backside safety because that's something they're going to do. And again, like, if you were game planning our defense, for example, I would know that's in the bag, right? I would know that they run their like one rat or one lurk like that, right? So that's where I kind of say, like, training camp for offense is a little bit more difficult because, like, again, you're not following the same thing all the time. So, but yeah, I think the defense is doing a good job. I think they're making it hard on the offense, and I think some of it's schematic and some of it's how well the defense is playing. Like, you got to give them their flowers. Like, they're doing a good job making some of these plays also. So
yeah, for sure. All right, a couple of guys that are worth clicking on. Unfortunately, a couple of the biggest ones are up front. Like, how's Coleman doing? How is Connerly doing? The young guys on the offensive line. Is it worth even commenting on at this stage, or is it just too hard without the pads to really have anything?
I think Connerly's figuring some stuff out on the right side. Like, he kind of played predominantly left tackle, and I think he's going to make the transition to right fine. But his ability to, like, move around in the run game is great. He's still figuring out his pass protection line, like where he needs to be, like how deep the kick needs to be. That's stuff that rookie players need to figure out. Like, I think he will. I'm not that worried about it.
Especially on a new side of the line.
Correct. Coleman's been harder to watch because he's playing guard, but I will say Tunsil, like, looks as advertised. Like, him in pass protection, man, is something special to watch. Like, the way he just glides back there is like bolt. Like, his feet are bolt splitting that pass protection line every single time. Like, he never gets unsquare. Like, he never opens his hips. Like, I remember from when I played with him in Houston, but, like, that's been really cool to watch. And again, they're not in shoulder pads yet, so there's still some physicality stuff that needs to be worked through there. Zach's looked great. John's done a great job in the run game with limited opportunity because they don't have pads on. Tyree Jackson made some plays today. Colson Yankov has made some plays. And that group in general, they always kind of...
What about Sinnott? Because that's the one everyone's...
Sinnott scored a touchdown today. Did a good job versus man-to-man coverage, breaking across the face. Had one with tight coverage with Kane Madrano where Kane did a good job. But again, like that's training camp, right? Like I'm trying stuff. I'm working stuff out. And he made a play, and Kane made a play on one, and so like, good job. We're getting each other better, and I think watching him run around, he looks good. He looks in shape, so that's good. And I'm trying to think if there's anybody else that really stuck out. Oh, Chris Rodriguez had an awesome blitz pickup today.
Love
I know
that.
they're in pads, but like you can hear that clack from the stands. Like that's always cool. So I think overall the offense, the playmakers kind of feel like they reside more in the tight end group right now, just from where the balls are being distributed and who's winning versus man-to-man coverage. And then the backs, it's impossible to tell because like that's one of the toughest positions without pads to evaluate. I think the offensive line looks solid. I think there's some growing that needs to happen for Connerly, but again, that's to be expected. And then I'll keep an eye on Coleman when we go out on Sunday, and I'll let you know exactly how I feel about him.
Yeah, Connerly starting mostly with the two, or pretty much all with the twos so far, and I think that was to be expected. Like, you know, it's one thing when it's Trey Amos on the defensive side, and there's not really an incumbent there, but like Andrew Wiley is an average NFL right tackle. And so if you're better than Andrew Wiley, you deserve to start, and you're going to be better than average at right tackle. Or even if it's close, right? Because then he'll get the reps, he'll get the experience, and we know the ceiling in the long-term play is higher. But you got to get to Andrew Wiley's level or close to it first. And yeah, I would expect a rookie changing size to take a second to get there. And again, that could be 2 weeks of training camp.
Right.
But it is unsurprising to me that he's starting with the twos. And, you know, I think Kime said this on his show, which I thought was this is just like well phrased. It's like, once you make Jaden Daniels earn it, for the rest of Adam Peters and Dan Quinn's time here, what other rookie could possibly come in and be like, nah, man, I deserve my starting spot? Like,
right.
Come on. Jaden had to earn it. Everyone else can earn it. And so this is a part of the competitive culture. The last guy, real quick, Deebo, because obviously huge part of the offense. And I referenced a little bit earlier that first throw. From what I was reading on social, it was like a choice takeoff, which is a really cool thing for Cliff to put in, where it's like Deebo forever has run these choice routes. He's really good at them. Obviously, the short area quickness. And typically on a choice, you break in or you break out. And this time, Deebo broke up, and Jaden's able to put a dot right on him, and it's a way to get explosive plays down the field in an offense that outside of Terry didn't generate a ton of them last year. Diami got a couple obviously later on in the season. But I thought that was a really cool thing to stick in the back pocket that hopefully we'll see at some point this season. I know he got a couple jet sweep looks. We know that's going to be a part of the offense. But what have you seen from Deebo now that he's in shape and everyone's happy about it? By the way, great chat with his trainer Nick Hill on Kime's show about just like how silly that whole thing was, where it's like, yeah, in the middle of May, he was in his like, I'm putting on weight, I'm getting back in that kind of shape before I slim down for the season. So now that Deebo's back in prime Deebo shape, how's he looking?
I think he looks good. I think, you know, obviously like anytime there's a new receiver in the building, and I think this is one of maybe the benefits of having Terry not here, is you got to work timing. And so like today he had a slant where Wynn's on the slant, the ball's a little behind, he can't wrangle it in. It would have been a good catch, could have been a better ball, but like working that timing, he had like a man beating kind of angle return on Thursday and kind of slipped. His feet weren't exactly right. And, you know, the cool thing about that was like right immediately after he's with Coach Ingram, and they're working, you know, like breaks and how the foot should have been and why he thinks he slipped. And I love that there's that kind of like awareness to be like, I got to get that better. But, you know, that would have been a touchdown probably if he doesn't slip. And so he's made plays. He's made some nice catches. Like there was another one where he wins on a high cross. We're talking about people winning versus man wins. The ball is just a touch out in front, you know, because he can't get there. So like there's been just good stuff. Like when you watch him, it's good. He looks like he's fit, looks like he's in shape, running good routes, crisp. You see, with like he ran a kickoff return back today. I was like, man, he's got some twitch and burst to him, which is awesome. It's just getting, I think, on the same page with the quarterback. And again, it's the third day of training camp. So versus these tight man looks, like I think that's something, a relationship that still needs to grow and to build, and I think it will. And but in terms of how he looks and how he moves, definitely, I think fans should feel good about it.
Yeah, and fans, you can see it on Sunday. Practice is open, one of the few that they're having this training camp, so you can check that out. We will be back early next week, probably Monday or Tuesday. We got to see what the schedules are looking like, and we'll recap another few days worth of practice. We do have a couple of lingering mailbag questions. If there's not as much to talk about, we might get one of those in, but appreciate everyone sending those in. We're probably done taking mailbag questions for now, so if you didn't get it in, put it in like an email draft and send it for, let's say next March, late March. Got to get through free agency. But anyway, we appreciate you guys doing that and listening all summer long. For those of you that took a summer break, if you want some more Take Command, you're like, wow, this was fun. Those mailbag episodes are kind of evergreen. You can go back and listen to them whenever you want. So go back and check those out. But we are full steam ahead. 2025 season is here. Off day on Saturday and then back to camp on Sunday. Logan will be out there. I'll be sitting here for another couple of days. So we'll do some more of this. If there's anything you guys do want to know that we haven't asked about or that I didn't ask about, feel free to leave a comment on YouTube on the episode and we'll try to sneak that in as well. For Logan, I'm Craig. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and we'll see you next time on Take Command.